What's up, everybody? Jordan Stewart here from Vover. Thanks so much for tapping into the Vover original show. Just a reminder that if you want to drop your opinions about the episode or respond to the host and guests with your voice, go and download the Vover app wherever you get your apps. Vover, voice over everything. Enjoyed the show.
It's time to level up with Dr. Mondo. What is good, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Level Up with Dr. Mondo. So excited to have today's guest join us. Someone that I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know over the past month or so. She is an amazing person. She's an actress. Some would say she's a model, but she might debate that. She's known for her roles in the television series Wizards of Waverly Place, The Gates, The 9 Lives of Chloe King, Scream Queens, and The Gifted. Joining us today on Level Up is Skyler Samuels. Skyler, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, Skyler, I think it's important for us to maybe start in talking about how the topic of mental health, something we discuss on the show, obviously, in every episode, is something that's important to you. And kind of how we came to know each other was through your role, and you're very much a prominent role in Good City Mentors. Maybe you could talk more about what drew you into that cause and the work that you're doing with Good City Mentors.
For sure. So Good City Mentors is a sort of grassroots operation in Los Angeles, and we are a team-based mentorship program. I think we're in like 10 to 15 schools now. Our growth through LAUSD has multiplied over the last couple of months. So somewhere between 10 and 15 schools. And I've been working with them for 4 years now. And what I love is that Good City Mentors really aims to bring the idea of like a team mentor. So it's not one-to-one like a Big Brother program. You maybe have like 4 or 5 students to 3 or 4 adult mentors. And it's really just a program that focuses on how to sort of be good adults, how we grow into people, how we prioritize, how we treat ourselves, how we treat other people. Mental health is a huge component of it, is sort of like how can we build healthy habits dealing with stressful times in high school and then leaving high school, and just sort of tools that everybody needs, but that not everybody gets. And it's a really wonderful program that I'm very, very honored to be a part of.
Yeah, I love everything about Good City Mentors and what you guys are doing. I think it's a perfect segue into today's conversation. Here on Level Up, we talk about challenges that we faced. And it's oftentimes the challenges we face in our lives as we do the work on healing and leveling up. We often want to, at some point, give back, right? And I see a lot of what you're doing there in Good City and being a part of the give back, but also just a part of your heart the more that I get to know you. I'm curious, when we look at the journey that you've been on, you've had incredible success as an actress. Your career is still, I would say, towards the beginning. There's still so much more career ahead of you. It can be easy for some people who watch your resume play out or watch the characters that you play and say, hey, Skyler just seems to kind of have it all going on and probably doesn't face a lot of adversity. Now, coming to know you, like most people, I know that's not the case. I know that you've been through some stuff. I would love to hear about a time in your life where maybe you haven't talked about it a lot, but a time in your life where you struggled emotionally. You struggled with something with your mental health, something that you went through that challenged you, stretched you, and just what you did to really show up for that or to attempt to overcome it in your journey to leveling up. So what comes to mind when that question is in front of you?
Well, the biggest, probably most life-changing adversity I've dealt with to date is 2 years ago, I lost a very close friend of mine. And, the circumstances around his passing were very tragic and sudden and just the sort of epitome of shock and grief. And I had never lost anybody like that before. I had been very lucky that that was the first person in my life. I hadn't had any experience with losing someone. And I think what's interesting now, sort of 2 years from the time that happened, I would say the last 2 years have been the hardest of my entire life. But I also think they've been the most informative. And I think something that I realized was that, I think throughout my whole life, I've had anxiety and depression, but I don't think I ever really identified it or named it properly. It's sort of like
Yeah.
it's like having a tweak in your back, like you can kind of feel there's something there, but I couldn't tell you exactly where the pain is.
Right.
And then you just sort of get used to having it there. You just get used to feeling this thing and you kind of accommodate it without ever really addressing it. And I think what happened when I lost my friend was there was no hiding, there was no escaping. That grief and sadness brought on real depression in a way that I couldn't look away from it. I couldn't ignore it. And it is sort of strange how, in the darkest times, who we really are and what we really need to face come to light. And I feel like sort of going through the mourning and grieving process of losing my friend also made me realize the parts of myself that responded with depression, like the parts of me that maybe I had been ignoring for most of my life that needed to be addressed. And I think it really helped me understand what depression is, how it sort of manifests in my life, and also how to sort of see it, acknowledge it. I can't always make it go away, but being able to sort of objectify it makes it a little easier to live with. And I think before it was like living with a roommate I didn't realize I was living with. And now I at least have sort of a concept of like, okay, it's in the house, it's not in charge, it's going to be here, but now I know what it is and I know how to sort of address it when it comes up.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you say there that I imagine listeners can resonate with. Just the fact that we're always having these dormant mental health experiences, whether they're anxiety, insecurities, depression, that we just kind of live with, and then it takes a major life stressor to really bring those out, bring those to life, because now what was, at a level 4 or 5 that was somewhat hideable and manageable now becomes on center stage. And so, I'm curious, were there moments for you after the loss that you suffered, when really you were battling on a day-to-day basis with some really extreme symptoms of the anxiety and depression that was visiting you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think anyone who's experienced depression, obviously it presents itself differently for all of us, but in my case, it was that feeling of I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to sleep, but I also didn't want to get out of bed. It was hard to just be motivated to shower, to pick up the phone, to call anyone, to just do anything. It was like having, an elephant just sitting on your chest. Like it was just the heaviest feeling and just that sort of stuck feeling that depression gives you, that real heaviness that even when you do manage to make it out of bed and walk around in the world, you kind of feel like you're in this fog and you're sort of going through the motions of your life, but you're not really present and just sort of being distracted and overwhelmed by this heaviness. And I think what was challenging for me was I felt versions of that, at different stressful moments in my life before. But like we said, so many of us just ignore these things that are latent. They're right under the surface, but we don't really address them for what they are. And in this time after I lost my friend, there was no denying that I was really, truly depressed and I didn't feel like myself. I felt so disconnected from the things that I enjoy. I felt disconnected from my job. I felt disconnected from my relationships. I felt disconnected from my hobbies. I just felt unplugged from my own life. And I think depression has a way of making you feel like you're going to be in this place forever. So get used to carrying the weight. And I feel like that can be very discouraging. And the irony with that is when you lose someone, especially like my friend was very young, he was 24, you realize that nothing can last forever because life is so short and so fragile. And so both having this epiphany of I'm depressed and I feel like I'm going to be here forever. And also, life is so short. So, how forever can this really be? And that was sort of, I think, the light bulb moment when I started to look at my mental health a little differently. and I kind of recalibrated my relationship with depression. Just sort of reminding myself it's not going to be there forever because this whole experience is so quick. So how can I find a way to sort of remind myself that this isn't permanent? Like, this too shall pass.
Tell you that as I'm listening to this, I'm living it with you. I'm reliving episodes of depression that I've gone through, and I'm feeling it. And I think that if I'm feeling it, that means that probably others are feeling it. I think it's so important for people with platforms like yourself to be willing to open up and be so honest and so vulnerable to share those experiences. I also, though, can just from the therapist in me can reflect back to you that I hear distance. And what I mean by that is sometimes when I hear distance and how we talk about tough experiences, it's distance that comes from a self-protective mechanism of distance, of almost like I've intellectualized this, but I haven't quite dealt with it because I'm just not ready. And then there's this other form of distance that I'm hearing more in your voice and in the way you talk about this, which is kind of some distance that comes with some healing. So I'm curious about that. What have you done in your journey to leveling up and continuing to just grow and be a better version of yourself? What did you do to heal and get some of this distance and acceptance that you're experiencing now with an understanding and wisdom with your experience?
Well, something you said reminded me of everyone told me with time, this will be easier. And I was so annoyed hearing that. I think anyone who is fresh off, any kind of trauma, being told that time will heal, it's like, okay, well, that's not right now. That doesn't make it any easier to live with in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a frustrating thing to hear. And I remember feeling very frustrated hearing that, although that was more or less the consensus of advice I was receiving. And I think what I had to do was, on some level, understand that, yes, in time, this probably will be a little easier to live with. Like, that pain, that heartbreak is never going to go away, but being able to manage it will get easier in time. But I'm not there yet. So what can I do right now? And the right now decision, I think there was definitely that part of denial, that you go through in grief. So I was there for a little while. And then I think once I exited that, I had to commit to just feeling it all day to day. And that was not something I was inclined to do, despite the fact that I'm an actor and I feel for a living. It's very different when it's your own real life. And it
Yeah.
can be overwhelming and intimidating to just stay with it. Because I wasn't even sure what was going to come up. I knew it was uncomfortable and I knew it was a lot, but not sort of shying away from just being in it. And I think that was the first real step to healing, because in allowing myself to just sit with it and remind myself that it wasn't going to be this permanent thing that took over my life forever, I was able to really sort of see what I needed to do for myself, the steps that I needed to take, the things that I wanted to change. And it sort of caused this beautiful ripple effect of, like, what kind of choices do I want to make in my life that I wasn't making before? Do I want to live with a little bit more of, like, seize the day? It made me realize I'm a very risk averse person, which generally is pretty good. But I think in this moment, I realized I want to be a little less fearful. I want to be a little less afraid moving through life. I want to be a little bit braver because life is so short. It also made me realize, the types of people that I wanted to keep around and close to my heart, and maybe time to get rid of a few too. I mean, it just really sort of woke me up in a way that has now made my life a much more beautiful place, and probably the healthiest it's ever been. It's hard that had to come out of something so tragic, but I feel like we can't avoid the traumas and the tragedies that happen to us, because in life sometimes those things just happen. But I came to realize that though I don't have control over what happens, I do have control over how I respond to it. And I think feeling that sense of, I dictate how I grow from this and who I am because of this experience. And that's been very empowering to sort of help me level up. I guess to anyone listening who's maybe in the thick of it or trying to navigate their way through healing, it comes from unexpected places. So as much as trauma and depression and anxiety can make us fearful and want to say no, I think it's when we say yes that we find the gains of healing. And it might not come from, the place you think it's going to come from, but the only way to know if it's out there is to say yes. So I guess just say yes as much as you can. And hopefully there's good healing on the other side.
Oh, Skyler, I'm really happy that we've had a chance to connect and meet. You're a great person. And
Thank you, Mondo.
I think it's so cool to watch someone that is really honed in on their craft and doing so well in your professional career, but also someone that clearly is going to have a huge impact offset as well in terms of just the person that you are. I encourage you to keep sharing, just keep being transparent as you are, because I know it's going to help end stigma for so many people, but also just encourage personal growth. And I think you are the embodiment of what we talk about on this podcast, that in order to grow and level up and really achieve the goals that you have for your life, you do have to meet some of what you're going through head on when it comes to your mental health stuff. And I appreciate you joining us today, and I hope you'll come back and share more.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Mondo.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in this week. And again, this is Dr. Mondo for the Level Up Podcast. We will see you next time. It's time to level up with Dr. Mondo.